Right. Welcome, everyone. Hope you are excited for this as I am. My name is Kevin McCumber. I'm an MIT alum, class of 05, 2011 PhD, and I run spirits tastings events for the MIT Club of Boston. I want to thank them for continuing to support these events, and also want to thank our fellow alumnus, Josh Moskowitz, for connecting us to the folks at Bhakta Spirits. And thank the team there, Allison, Andrew, Raj, and the rest of the staff for making this event happen. These kits are never easy to put together. They're great kits. I'm really excited to dig into these. As far as the event goes tonight, like usual, we'll take questions as we go. If you want to do the Zoom raise hand thing, or if you want to put it in the chat, we'll just get to them as we go along. And then at the end, if there's any unanswered questions, we're planning to save a little time for Q&A near the conclusion. Also, if we have any time near the end, we can go to breakout rooms. This is where you get in a room with 5 to 6 other folks, very informally, very casual, and just chat like if we're at a tasting. So we'll kind of play that by ear, see how it goes. And we plan to wrap up by 9 o'clock Eastern. All right. Then it's my pleasure to introduce Raj Bhakta. If you're a fellow whiskey nerd like me, you might know Raj as the founder of WhistlePig Rye, which has taken the world by storm. Raj's new venture is Bhakta Spirits, where he offers the brandies that we're going to be tasting tonight. So Raj, I'll turn it over to you, let you do any more intro, or otherwise just we're in your hands. And we're looking forward to tasting these and hearing from you.
Great. Thank you, Kevin, for putting it together. I want to introduce Andrew Lose, who is our head of communications. His other persona is Phineas T. Withy, who is our librarian here at the library of Green Mountain College, where we are in Pulteney, Vermont, and we'll give you a little bit of a tour.
And that's a spirits librarian, just to be clear.
Right, the cataloger of spirits, of which we have like over 140 vintages of. So the first thing that I would like everybody to do is to start opening up the oldest one of these, which is the one that says 50 years on it. And as you're opening that thing up and pouring it out, we're going to let that begin to open up, because this is some of the oldest spirits that you will likely have ever tasted. It's a blend of 8 different vintages that go back to 1868. It's the youngest juice is now 52 years old, 1970, and the oldest is over 150 years old from 1868. The average age is in its mid 60s. So it takes a little bit of time to open up. So start with that, please, everybody. Now, thank you. So it's good to be with all you smart MIT folk. I'm sure that wasn't too complicated for you of opening up the brandy and putting it in your glass. We began. I've got years now in the whiskey business, but what really got WhistlePig started was finding a really great category that was underappreciated. And that, in the case of WhistlePig, was rye whiskey. And now this is about Armagnac and brandy more generally. So I saw somebody asking if there's a trick to opening this thing. I don't know. I didn't open mine. I maybe you get a knife and cut the wax. So let's start. We're going to start our tasting with the 2707. We'll get a little bit of spirit into you as we begin. So go ahead and pour the 2707. This 2707, I'm going to start off with, is actually is a mislabeled product. So this is one of those really rare opportunities to pick something up that's a mistake, but one that is, let's say, serendipitous for the consumer, because this stuff, the 27 and the 07, is meant to indicate that you see in small letters, probably on the one that you went, the oldest and the youngest spirit in the blend, from 27 years old to 7 years old. That was the idea. What's actually in here is a blend that is from 18 years to 49 years. So the operations manager in France screwed up, and he put much older spirit into the blend. And so you have it. So as we started tasting, when I began, you know, my master distiller, the guy who I got this thing, it's called the Kentucky Chew. All right. His name was Dave Pickerel, who taught me this. Dave was the master distiller at Maker's Mark. He was my master distiller at Whistle Pig, and, you know, God rest his soul, he dropped dead in the saddle, so to speak, you know, working in the market. But what he would always say is, you take a sip and you give it a good chew, almost like you're trying to chew it. Get it all around your mouth, work it around, chew, 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 and then you take a swallow. I do a lot of tasting, so I got to spit. So this flavor profile is probably unlike anything that you've ever had before, because nothing like this has ever been released on the market. It is Armagnac. So a couple of people just joined. So pour the 50-year-old, open the 50-year-old, pour it into a glass and put that aside. Take a drink of the 2707, and this is brandy. Okay, these are two different types of brandy that, to my knowledge, have never been blended. It is Armagnac, which is from the southwest of France, and that is a grape distillate. It's white wine distilled and aged for a long time. And Calvados from the northwest of France, from the Normandy region, and that is basically distilled cider, apple brandy. These two are blended together in 2707. And finished in a Scotch cask, a quick Scotch cask finish to complement the sweetness that you get in the product with a pinch of smoke. I like doing cigar pairings with a lot of my spirits, hence I appreciate the smoke, the kiss of smoke on the cigar. Now, what is brandy? I mean, some of you may know, some of you may not. Brandy is a fruit-based distillate. Whiskey is a grain-based distillate. So bourbon is from corn, rye is rye, and Scotch, Irish, Indian, Japanese, most of the other international varieties are barley-based, okay? Now, the first thing is, why drink brandy? Why get into brandy? Brandy is a much more inherently exquisite product. Why? Well, just use you know, let's say the gut reaction approach. It's much more expensive to produce a bushel of apples or grapes, you know, fresh product off the vine, than it is to produce grain. Being in this business, just looking at one, to plant the speed, the time and the care that you have to give to creating the product and the end product itself, you're starting with basically a much more expensive input with brandy. All right. And so that, you know, inherently superior, more expensive, you know, more appealing right off the tree product, if you want to try.
I think too, another factor is just brandy is a far more terroir driven product. You have much more variables when it comes to the grape, the geography, the aspect, the vineyard, the harvest and the cultivation, and then you have the technique of the distiller, then you have the impact of the barrel. So you have probably 4 times as many variables than you would with a whiskey.
That's right. And and the result that you get here, 18 to 49 years old, is a very, very drinkable, lovely product. The price on this is around $80. This is a product that was, you know, was a mistake. It's never coming out again. We're not using this labeling convention of oldest to youngest vintages really anymore. So this is a special bottle, tastes great, works with a great variety of different spirits. And then, you know, we can do some of our tastings up front. So you go through and we can, begin that process, and then I'll go into background and backstory of how I got into the whiskey business and the creation, of my previous company and finding this stash of Armagnac and Brandy in France and everything that went into that. But we'll put some of the tastings on the front side of things, because I know sometimes when I'm going to these, dinners in France, they send the chef up and, he talks for a half an hour about the food and I'm just dying to eat. So being sensitive to that, let's move quickly to, and we'll go back and forth a little bit, but 2707, beautiful tasting product, great balance. You pick up the apple right on the nose. You get a hint of that, a smoke finish in the middle, and I mean in the end, and then in the middle you get the nice, blend of the Armagnac flavor. The next one we're going to taste is, so I've made a point about why drink brandy. Brandy is an inherently superior product to drink than online. I see somebody's asking about where we can buy it. I think you can buy it online, right?
That's true. There are a number of retailers online with 2707, and then the Bhakta 50 year.
And there are a couple of places in Massachusetts.
That's true. In Boston, I believe there are 3 to 4. And for the Bhakta 50 year, you can buy it directly at bhaktaspirits.com.
So now we're moving to 1982. This is a pure Armagnac vintage. Armagnac is the biggest spirits discovery that I've made in the world of spirits. Small region, southwest corner of France, has the first area of recorded distillation on Earth. A papal legate writes back in the 14th century back to Rome. He's like, basically to the Pope, that this is a place he's got to check out the spirit production. The production techniques were brought to them during a brief Arab conquest. They brought the alembic distillation technology in that region of France, and that's where distillation began in France, and it continued through. Armagnac is a grape distillate. Armagnac region centered around a town called, it's called Condom, Condom, Condom. And this is a region of, it's very pastoral, rolling hills, much better looking than the Champagne region. There's a variety of there's woodlands, there's a variety of different farms, and Armagnac is all produced it's a single distillation. So it's pretty much done in wood-fired stills in the countryside. They can only produce for 6 months of the year. So when you think of craft, and there's craft whiskey and craft this is like the gold standard of craft. This is what you imagine. 6 months production, wood-fired stills, right off the field. So 1982 vintage. Now we're going to shift to a single vintage Armagnac. Armagnac is about vintages. Vintages, if you're going to drink different things, the beauty about vintages, you pull a bunch of different years out and you can do essentially time travel. You want to do a tasting notes on this one?
Sure thing.
Andrew is beginning. He comes from a wine background. He just came up to New York. He wrote a book while he was at Dartmouth on the fraternity system there.
From the beverage culture, actually.
The beverage culture, yeah. The beverage culture of college life. What do you have in this one?
Definitely some dried fruit, plum, prune, a lighter wood note. One thing about the vintage Armagnacs that obviously makes them quite different from the Bhakta 50 and the 2707, there's no Isla cask on this, so less smokiness, but you definitely get the fine grained tannins from the wood there.
It's a little bit of astringency in the end.
From the traditional Gascon oak. Definitely lighter on the palate, super long.
Do you find this lighter than the 2707?
I do. The 2707 has, to me, more round, sweet fruit notes that stand out. Here, with this age, you're getting a lot more dried fruit, kind of fruit leather, a little bit of spice, cinnamon, clove. Clove is standing out. So
part of what I enjoy here, so we're going up significantly in proof. So 2707 is 90 proof, 45% alcohol. Now we're up to 106, 106 proof, roughly 52.8% alcohol. So, you know, part of that may be picking up some additional, just plain old fashioned, you know, alcohol punch. But the cool thing to me about the vintages is that you do this time travel piece, right? So let's think about the world. There's this book that comes along with this thing called the Stockholder Program that we have, where you buy a variety of different vintages. Andrew can tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. But in 1982, Cold Sunday sends temperatures to record lows across America. And the Cold War is also freezing. Elected on staunch anti-communism, Reagan rearms missiles across Western Europe, the drawing suspicion from the KGB and outrage from activists. In other news, Epcot opens in Disney World, and ciabatta bread is invented in Verona.
In 1982? I thought that was a traditional product like Armagnac.
Also, what did we say? E.T. also came out
E.T.,
in
Thriller, the Falklands War.
And I think Grenada. Did Grenada happen in 82? It was an
82,
invasion.
82, 83?
The interest rates were probably at, you know, in the mid-teens.
Where were you in
at least.
1982, Raj? What was that like for you?
82, I was in, like, I think I was in second grade.
Good year, bad year, good vintage?
It was a good year. I think I was getting picked on in 82. I remember they kicked my lunchbox all over the place. I went to a new school. And my little sister came up to defend me. I think that was like 82. Now there are a couple of people who have just joined. So yeah, open the 50-year-old. Let that breathe for a bit. Now we're going to go into the 50-year-old. So as we're going I'm going to take a little time on this 50-year-old because this is, first of all, it's a steal for what it is. It's a $400 bottle. It may sound surprising when I say that, but when I tell you about how old this is, it will. By the way, you can drink the other, you know, things. Not that I'm really, you know, checking through the thing, but you know, as I now wax poetic here with my literary debut, which is this little burgundy book, not the little red book, the little burgundy book that comes with the bottles of 1950. It begins thusly. The greetings, my friend. What you now possess is perhaps the rarest drink known to mankind. It is Armagnac Brandy. I'm speaking of the 50-year-old, 1868 to 1970, a blend of 8 different varieties. It is Armagnac Brandy kissed by smoky Scotch casks. Over 5 generations, as empires rose and fell, this brandy has slumbered. It represents an opportunity to taste ages past through a liquid whose very existence is miraculous. The oldest spirits in this bottle, distilled in 1868, were born of vines planted around the time of Abraham Lincoln's birth. They were poured into barrels made from trees, older, predating than the American Revolution. The youngest spirits in the blend were distilled before the invention of the home computer, during a time when the Soviet Union and the United States vied for global supremacy. These young spirits are older than any whiskey on the market, than almost any whiskey on the market. They were amassed over generations by a family of French eccentrics before I acquired and transformed them. How does this spirit even exist? Shall we taste it now? Enough with the anticipation. So this is now going to be, this is much, much older. This is a significant jump from the flavors that we've already even tasted. You're going to pick up some of the smoke on the nose. The proof is, this is 48% alcohol, so just shy of 100 proof. This is barrel 21, only 38 barrels of this released. This is a magnificent and complex spirit. The flavor profiles, I mean, you have smoke. The sweetness of brandy is less prevalent. It has a let's say, medium length in its finish. And the whole idea here in the 50 is to basically build a bridge from those familiar, particularly with Scotch, to move into the brandy realm, into the Armagnac realm, in particular, with giving it this kiss of smoke. I don't think there's anything better for pairing with a cigar. In this particular blend, which you received barrel 21, I believe. Yes,
That's correct.
Barrel 21. It's named after Amelia Earhart. The Earhart is the name, so it's 1868, 1897. Gilded Age, 1924, Roaring Twenties, 1937, Depression, war clouds in Europe, 52, boom years, 63. Let's see, it's assassinated. Kennedy gets killed, 1965. Vietnam's escalating, and 1970, we had just gone to the moon. So there is a huge sweep of history in there. And the fact that I think I lost it. Can you guys still hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
What blows me away with this is that this spirit, especially the stuff that's pre-World War II, that it even exists, because in France, this stuff managed to survive, 3 German invasions, 1870, 1914, 1940. It never got sold. It never got, looted. It never got blown up. So this is in the southwest of France, which basically, made it through all these cataclysms untouched.
And it's amazing too that the family that had owned this whole extensive and deep collection were uniquely bad at both drinking it or selling it. And if they had been good at even half good at one of those things, Raj would have never, it just wouldn't have been there for you to discover at all.
Yeah, inside the book, there's a picture of the guy, and I can be a little unkind to him. Somebody asked me to repeat the years. It was 1868, 1897, 1924, 1937, 1952, 63, 65, and 70. How I found these, and we'll open it up for some questions. I see a hand out there. How I found these. So this is how I found them. I was in France, and you see I'm being chased up with a broom that's in this book. My wife was not happy with me. I really didn't do anything bad, but she was pregnant with baby number 4 and ill-disposed towards me and chased me out of the house. So I ended up driving we were in the Alps. I drove all the way across France into the Armagnac region, where, no kidding, I meet this guy, 5th generation French family. The guy develops, I don't know, he was kind of losing his mind. And wanted to sell all of his stocks, that his family had been, basically they were traders. They were in the marine, they were stocking all the ships, like the transatlantic voyage, like Normandy, during the transatlantic days, they made a fortune basically supplying the big liners. And they had been buying since late 1890s and had almost every vintage from 1868 to the present day. I drive in, beginning my negotiations very poorly in an Escalade with Be Our Guest. I've got 4 young kids, and that song, and be our guest, put our service to the test, tie a napkin around your neck, show you that song. I'm blasting it on the sound system of the Escalade as I pull into the courtyard of the chateau, not really paying attention to it. And he's got this American guy, this blasting rapper sound system in an Escalade, singing Be Our Guest. And that cost me a couple million euros just making that kind of silly entrance. But I'm going to stop at this. What really had me, so I had been buying, I knew that I was selling Whistle Pig. I'd been buying spirits from really all around the world. My objective was to really collect the best portfolio of ultra aged spirits, which we're bringing to this library. Make sure we don't forget to tell them
So,
about
yeah,
what
take them on a walk too over here.
yeah. I was trying to land this on a point. I go in, 10-year-old whiskey, that's pretty old. 18-year is really good and old whiskey. 25-year-old's ancient. Same sort of thing in rum. I walk into this place and we go into a medieval cellar. And he's got every single vintage in these things called bonbons. I don't know if you can see them. So this is 1946. Every single vintage from 1868 to the present day. What we're bringing into the library here, which, Andrew is the spirits librarian. What do we call you, Andrew? We'll come up with a good
We'll come up with that.
We're bringing that here and you'll be able to taste it all. So I see a hand with a question. I can try to answer a couple of questions now that I'm kind of midway through here.
I wanted to ask about, so what are the differences between the numbered bottles? So 21, 20, 19, what's different?
Great question. There's a lot to cover. There's a deep, story behind almost all the different things that we put out. But what was your name? I can't.
Sorry, it's Anthony.
Anthony. All right, Anthony. So each one of these are released. The Bhakta 50s. Each one comes out with a specific. All of them are numbered by bottle number and by barrel number. So there are only 38 barrels released forever of the 50 year of the Bhakta 50. So each one of these are kind of, the idea is to create as a collector item. For what I recommend is you get two. The vernacular term is one to stock and one to rock. Buy different barrels, hold on to one as an investment. So for those of you familiar with WhistlePig, you've heard maybe of this Boss Hog line, which is our high-end line. The Boss Hog 1 and 2 were a couple $100 a bottle. They're now, $10,000 plus bottles. Josh, maybe you could answer that question of where people can buy the 2707 in Boston. You've got the account list. It's in a number of different places. But all individualized barrels, and each one has different vintages. So all of them are bookended by 1827. By 1868 and 1970, but the different vintages in between change, as does the length and the type of barrel that we use for the Scotch finish. Does that answer your question? Does it make sense?
I think there's a piece too that's relevant there. The name of each barrel. So we have Earhart here, barrel 21, and then each year in the blend corresponds to life events, birth, death, key events of the named barrels, the person's career. So for example, with Churchill, you have 1941, Battle of Britain. You have 45, the end of World War II. And then I think it's kind of telling the story of how Armagnac, rare in the world of spirits, because of its nature as a vintage product, is this window into unique moments in time, kind of unlike any other spirit at all.
Yeah, there's no other spirits category where you've got this variety of different vintages. The other thing you can begin. Go ahead.
Sorry, all the numbered would have sort of what's in them and what the significance is. They're all named. Okay.
So I don't know if you can see that. Is it too? Can you see that? What's written or no? Okay, so there. So it tells you the name, it tells you the barrel number, it tells you the bottle number, the proof, and the vintage that are in. So each one is individualized with these things. So barrel number 1 was called, Revival. Barrel number 2 was, I think, Hogsworth. And they all have different, stories associated with them, with the particular vintages that went into them. We have this thing called the Stockholder Programs. For those of you who might, collect rare wines and spirits, it's meant to be, and you can get in touch with Andrew or through Kevin or email Josh. He may have, I don't know, who's in the MIT network in the group, but you can it's a small number, only 125 every year can come in. It's, meant to be by invitation. You have to know somebody. But you can buy a collection of the bottles below retail price. And the idea is what I love about the Stockholder program. It's literally a program where I know how incredible it sounds. You drink and grow rich, make your investment worth more because you have 2 bottles. The idea is you share 1 bottle, hopefully with your friends, get them into a new spirits category, depleting half the stock. You keep 1 as a long-term appreciation, potential. You can come up to Vermont and store your product in the library here, bring friends and do tastings and blendings. You can utilize this chateau in France and this ranch that we've got in Florida. So you drink half your stock, and whatever you kept will more than pay for whatever you drank. And you're in a fun group of people. We have an annual gathering here and interesting trips. Like I'm doing a trip down to Colombia to the coffee region. We offer stockholders different access to cool hand-selected products. I can talk more about that later, but if you like the idea of collecting them and investing in spirits, Armagnac, knowing supply and demand of this business, is going to pop big time in prices. And
the prices are starting to move to, is it 55% or 50%? The export price has increased in the last 2 years.
Yeah, prices are already rising.
1 year. So I think that the trajectory is going in one direction, but the supply, there'll never be more of 1868 of anything, least of all brandy, because we can drink it and we're all here drinking it together today.
The thing is, the 2 big markets haven't really picked on. America hasn't picked up Armagnac and China hasn't picked up Armagnac. It's kind of a French product, and they're actually not drinking it because they want to drink more,
Baijiu.
Yeah, the whiskey actually in France. So their domestic market is going in. So it's provided this opportunity because it's not cool to the young people as the traditional French drink. But from it, you can taste it. So any other questions before I start moving on? I can give you a tour of the library. Okay. So what we're doing is bringing these different, so what happens is normally, like this is, I don't know if you can see the difference, but this is an American whiskey barrel, 52 gallon, roughly 200 liter barrel. And this is what almost all American barrels go first into bourbon. Then they go to Scotland, mostly where they age Scotch. And we finish like a 50-year-old in these barrels. This is a 1985 vintage, and we're moving into this library, which has got 4 floors, all the different vintages. After it has spent about, come on, I'll show you this one. This is an Armagnac barrel. Armagnac barrel is twice as big as an American barrel, as a whiskey barrel. And this is what most of our product is aged in. This here is a 1981. This 81, I recommend a trip up here just to try this 1981. This is one of the best vintages I've ever tried. Believe it or not, it's like a chocolate flavored bomb. We have 76 here, but they'll spend about between 35 and 75. It's a big range, between 35 and 75 years in a barrel. And then you'll take it out and put it into these things, which are called you can either call it a demijohn. In Armagnac, they call it a bonbon, a little bit more to this thing here. So this is a 1962. This is finished aging. You open it up from time to time to let it oxidize, which in the spirit kind of mellows it out, takes some of the ethanol burn, especially when it's high proof. This is a really great old rum for a rum brand that we're creating. And this library, Obadiah will be the brand. The library, which you see in here, is being like within the next couple of months, we're moving all the product in, and you'll be able to come up here to Vermont and taste on the first floor all the spirits that are between 10 or between 10 and 20 years, and then you'll be 20 years and above. And the second floor, 20 to 80, and then 80 and above. So if you wanted to come here and taste what does the 1868 taste like for, maybe $100, you can buy a, drink of that, which is a $20,000 bottle. You can book a tour. How do they book a tour? We have an email set up for that.
We have an email set up, and then we'll also be bringing back phone reservations to kind of key into this throwback product and a throwback college library experience.
What email do you use? Info at Bhakta Spirits?
Info at Bhakta Spirits. And then I will handle that
and
personally.
Andrew will personally handle that. But you should come in. It's a really, really cool experience. Well, we're putting in Griswolds, and we're going to do them in different places. You can go in. I'm bringing all the different spirits, not just Armagnac. So Hogsworth is the bourbon. There's a cool whiskey project called Empire, where we have the full world Indian whiskeys, Scotch, American from all different varieties, French whiskey, Japanese, and you create a blend, which is your personal blend. So now you pull out a bottle, you've actually made your personal selection. So if I go and say, what's the best spirit in the world? People have a debate. And with Bhakta, you can create a vintage selection that's your whole family story. So, whatever, my father came to America and my grandfather came to America in this year. And, then we have this vintage, and I went to high school then, and you literally a lifetime of milestones and vintages. You can personalize those selections. But Josh, you can probably send them. You could also email Josh if you have your link. You can get him if you want the information on the Stockholder program, we can send a book out, which is this one here, and it goes through all the different vintages and the different pieces of the program. So what do we want to talk about next? I can talk, anybody with any questions on the spirit or anything in particular? Anybody have sent all questions? Okay. Can you elaborate about the differences between, whoever asked that, you can just, Kevin, you want to quarterback this? The questions, I can't, they pop up and they go away on my screen.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't read them all.
Can you elaborate about differences between whiskey and brandy?
Okay. So fruit makes brandy, grain makes whiskey. Fruit is much more expensive than whiskey. So my production cost on a gallon of brandy in general, let's say Armagnac in particular, is about 5 times higher. It costs about 5 times more to produce. So it's just a more expensive input to make a product with, and it's a little tougher to work. So you can have apple brandy. What we tasted first in the 2707, that was apple and grape brandy. So Calvados and Armagnac blended together. The 2707 to me is absolutely magnificent. I mean, for $80, you're drinking an 18-year-old to 50-year-old product. That's a one-time release. So this is, you can make a cocktail with it. It's almost like a cocktail in a glass. You really don't even need to do much with it. Throw it in a cube of ice if you like, drop a dash of bitters into it. But this is a spectacular, and only 1,000 cases came over here, and it'll never come out again. What else?
We got a question about, what does Bhakta mean?
Bhakta is my last name.
What do you mean, Raj?
So Bhakta means, in Hindi, it means like a devotee, the devoted. It comes from, in my family's region of India, they're from Gujarat. They were several centuries ago Patels, and they became followers of this guy named Kabir, and they became known as Bhaktas, which were the devotees of this guy Kabir. But Bhakti means, devoted. In this case, devoted to the finest spirits in the world.
Very nice. Ooh. I'll get the next one for you here. Do people ever blend fruit-based distillates with grain-based ones? For example, brandy and whiskey.
You know, I would have said no, but I just found this old blend from in this store in London where, I don't know, 30 years ago, somebody had made a couple of bottles and put them out, which was a blend between Armagnac and whiskey. And it tasted great. So yes is the answer, but not done in any large scale commercial way. Also not done really anytime that I've worked is this mixture of Armagnac and Calvados. So I want to hear like a little bit of a poll. Like, is there some way to tell like what are people's favorites between the 2707,
Yeah.
between the 50 and the 1982?
Kind of a cool comparison because all three of them are so different in terms of the wood, in terms of the smokiness, in terms of the fruit characteristics, and that's it really just depends on people's palates. 1982 is the best. Dana says. Feel free to chime in if anyone has any.
Yeah, 82 is spectacular. 82 and 50. Stephen, it's 2707. Not 1707, but it's so you remember that one.
Hey, so I have to ask a question, totally unrelated to brandies, but a couple weeks ago, took my kid up to Stowe, traditional. I go down to Vermont Artisan Roasters. I have the best cappuccino in the world. And then I go upstairs to Whistle Pig and it's not there. And there wasn't a Whistle Pig. Are you guys closed? Are you not doing that anymore up in Stowe?
So you're talking about that,
the great tasting where you can taste the Boss Hog. We also have, and they did the Whistle Pig and with the coffee roaster. All that stuff.
I sold Whistle Pig in 2019, so I'm not on top of it anymore. I've just got a little bit left in it. So I don't know what happened. Maybe they raised the rent too much and they said, screw this. But it was a great tasting room.
Yeah.
That was I put that together. That was like one of the last things that I did. But next time you come up, I can't see your name there because now I've got this poll on my thing. It looks like
Interesting poll results though.
50%. The 82 is the winner.
This augurs well for the vintage program release, which is currently happening and kicking into high gear this spring.
So, come over and check the library out when you're in Vermont.
Absolutely.
It'll be, it's something that, how did you get introduced to Whistle Pig?
Oh, well, how can you not? I mean, you go up to Vermont. And so I got into rye because there was a rye distiller that was a barbershop in San Francisco many years ago. And so it was a barbershop distiller. And I was like, this is great. It's like chewy. I couldn't quite describe it. And so I was discovering rye at sea before anybody else did. And then came to Vermont. I started with coffee and like, oh my God, look, you can do a tasting. And that was like amazing at that time. And even the maple syrup is actually pretty awesome.
The maple syrup was great.
Yeah.
Maple syrup was terrific.
We actually I was just talking to one of the groundskeepers right before the tasting. We have we have all these maple trees right here on the kind of back college green that he was showing me where they had been tapping them when this was Green Mountain College. So I was saying, we got to talk to Raj about this, make maple syrup here. If we can make spirits, then the permitting and the regulations for maple syrup shouldn't be too hard. And I know, a couple of Vermont brands are putting this into bourbon and different whiskey blends. At the moment now. I think let's see, I've had barrel aged here, but it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's so interesting about Griswold and what we're doing here is that this is kind of the staging ground for the brands and the characters of the brands in the Bhakta Spirits family. Now, obviously, Bhakta 50 is kind of the flagship, right? And the old vintages are the key of that crown jewel. But, Raj mentioned aged rum, world whiskey blend. All of these things in the beginning will only be available here, and you can create your own blends of them, even choosing the water that you use to blend, into your vodka. It does make a difference, even in a simple spirit such as that. So I think that that's why, to me, why I'm so excited about Griswold, that there isn't, in the world of tours and tastings, distilleries, breweries, this has never been attempted before, and it will probably very likely never be attempted again. I don't think that MIT will be bankrupted and then turned into some kind of spirits blending experience. It seems highly unlikely to me.
Yeah, you should do a group trip up here. So, I guess in the world of spirits, right? Vodka is kind of like grade 1 in terms of flavor. Then you get gin, and then you get the lighter rums. Then you move into whiskey, and then you move into brandies. The brandies, just talking about as a category, right? I mean, brandy was the high-end drink, really, but brandy got completely taken out by Prohibition. And after Prohibition, whiskey kind of flowed in and became the dominant drink in America. But if you were going to have in 1915, because there was
easier to make and easier to.
It was all being produced in Canada, right? And Britain. Then you could smuggle it across the Canadian border,
right?
And Britain had the colonies, Jamaica and stuff like that, and that they were able to bring it. That's what you could smuggle, that you would smuggle in.
Yeah.
So brandy was what people really drank, and on the high end side. And then it kind of evolved into whiskey during Prohibition and stayed that way about 100 years ago. Now brandy's coming back. And that's why, I was making the point on buying these vintages, the way like wine and, whiskeys and spirits were, Whistlepig was part of this premiumization trend where people were really learning, and getting into drinking higher end spirits. But the top, just like the top of wine, is having a big vintage selection, being able to taste year by year. The same thing's true in spirits. And so you can pick up collections of, if you want to buy the entire 1980s, you can pick up the 80s and the 90s in a vertical selection, pop open your bar. You want to remember the world in 1980, you take a taste of the 1980, take a taste of the 1982. All of them are unique and different. But it's kind of like the apex of the spirits world of basically having your vintage collections. And Armagnac vintages, you can buy basically the entire decade of the 1980s for, $2,000-$3,000. You can pick up a 1980 to 89, which is what, that's 40 almost. It's 40 years, more than 40 years ago. That's 40 old stuff, right? 30 to 40-year-old product that's available now because Armagnac as a category hasn't been discovered. A lot of you liked 82. That's an example of a great vintage. I can go over here and pull that 1981 out of the barrel. In my opinion, if you like 82, you should try 81. So next round.
I think I saw one question come up about the difference between Cognac and Armagnac. And I think the way that I looked at it from my sommelier background is that Cognac, you have the polished, it's very buffed. You have 2 distillations.
Double distillation.
Almost kind of Photoshop. The edges are smooth. Whereas Armagnac is really the true craft product. This is the dirt under the fingernails.
Yeah, it's the rustic.
Column in a barn in France.
Yeah, it's the rustic cousin of Cognac. Cognac, it's an interesting, Cognac made it to the world stage because it was connected to the city of Bordeaux from the Gironde River. And so the Armagnac was more isolated. And it's part of the culture of Armagnac. They're not really, it's a rich agricultural region. They were not, I would say, it doesn't have like a hustling entrepreneurial culture. Bordeaux has that because it was an English and Dutch city. The English had it for over 100 years, and the Dutch were in there for a while and became like a big trading post where all the wines were coming out of France to the rest of the world. So that was the center of France's wine trade, and that was the spirit that they were exporting was Cognac. And that's how Cognac made it to the world stage. And Armagnac kind of, didn't. It's now being discovered. That's from a geography standpoint. From a product standpoint, the big difference is cognac is double distilled, so it's a more refined product. And literally, I mean that, more refined. So if you want a younger, cognac will taste better in its youth, and I'm generalized, than an Armagnac will. But an Armagnac will taste better in the long term because it's got more character, that it will hold up better in time in the barrel. So if you have a very light, delicate product that goes into the barrel, it's quickly dominated by the wood. But I look at it, as like a racehorse, right? It's the horse that's kind of like a crazy bronc buck in its youth that can turn into the greatest champion because it's got the humph, to begin with. Which exists much more in Armagnac. And lastly, Armagnac probably has, the average, more cognac is spilled in a day than Armagnac is produced in a year. So it's like a tiny, tiny subcategory. There are no big brands.
Is there an implication for the color of the wax that the bottles are sealed with? We have one that's gold and one that's red.
I would be making it up if I told you that I knew that maybe they thought in the.
There is a reason. I mean, the red wax is for the specific vintages. The vintage program. I mean, red, it kind of imparts a certain dignity to the packaging of the product. It's not as gaudy as the gold, with this more awe-inspiring 50-year age statement. So you have some history and a little bit of modesty there as well.
I wasn't responsible, but I like that idea.
Yeah.
So are we able to buy the bottles up at Green Mountain or locally? I mean, obviously on the website, but if we go up there?
Yeah, you could come on up here and make a reservation with, well, I can give you my email address. It's Raj, R-A-J, at Bhakta Spirits, and I'll get you connected up. And it's by private tours right now. And
we got to do this, buddy. Come on.
We need to charter an MIT to Griswold Express.
Yeah, the party bus. I understood, like when I was in school in Boston, I heard that the MIT folks were some of the most vigorous partiers when they got to it.
Yeah, when I was in college, my now fiance spent the summer living in an MIT fraternity. I think it was Skull House or something with a skull. I don't know if that rings any bells with anyone, but it was a wild scene. Not quite Griswold's, but it had its
Senior
own
House.
What is it called?
Senior House.
They shut it
Always
down.
Senior House.
They ended it.
Senior House. Okay.
It may have ended, but it was a wild scene.
I must have invented the skull aspect of that.
No, you didn't.
No, it
Oh,
was
is
an
that-
ascot.
is that the-
Sport Death is the logo.
Yeah, the skull is a
I
real
see.
prominent marker.
Mm. So, background into it, in terms of, for those of you interested, I guess, how you get into the spirits business, people are generally curious. So I began this journey of getting and learning much more. Well, I've always been a lover of I was a member of the, Bourbon Society when I was 20 years old in Boston, and I was doing tastings and, getting all these different pamphlets and information about bourbon. And I went from bourbon to whiskey, but I was just, let's say, I would call it this side of the bar, the consumer side of the bar. I ran for, well, there was a whole bunch of different things happened. So, I mean, I was doing a hotel development. This is the immediate trajectory. In 2003, I was doing a hotel in Vail. I couldn't stand working in the family business, didn't like working with my dad. So, a friend suggested that I go on this show called The Apprentice, where you get fired by Trump. So I ended up going on that show 2004. And 2005, the show ended in 2005. So then I ran for Congress because that's what one does after being on a reality TV show. I actually have a significant interest in politics. Ran a very colorful race. I took like an elephant across the Rio Grande to show how open the border was, and had all sorts of colorful antics because I couldn't afford, the media buys. This is in Philadelphia, where I'm from. In that market, very bad year. It was a very anyway. Long story short, didn't win the race. And then to lick my wounds afterwards, I bought this farm in Vermont, kind of in the middle of nowhere, because I wanted to reflect on what I would do next in life, and I had this very a Thoreau like vision that I would go out there in the woods and the spirits would move me about what I should do next. That didn't happen. The economy tanked in 2008, and I needed to make the farm work. So that's when I began thinking about, well, what can I make on this farm? I can grow grain. With grain, I thought I was going to make beer first, and I went from beer, then I went to vodka. And then I was really lucky because I met the master distiller of Maker's Mark, who had just came out of his, tenure there. And I really wanted to do this high-end whiskey. And I had the Whistlepig brand in my head, but I didn't have any old whiskey. If you're going to do a premium brand, I'm a deep believer. By the way, if you're going to spend any money on spirits, buy age statements. I mean that, because the people without age statements, they say, well, age doesn't matter. Like, money and good looks or something. But age matters. It's the apex of spirits value, because it takes a lot of money to let things age for a long time, and they generally also improve. Now, things can begin to go downhill after a while. In bourbon, you probably don't want to drink something past 15 years. So never chase a bottle of Pappy 23. It's over oaked. I'm sorry for those of you who may have spent a couple $1,000s buying one. And if you enjoyed it, forget what I said. But you can get a great, bourbon at 10 years. The Scotch, because it ages much longer. Scotland is a much more temperate climate, continental climate in new oak. I'm throwing out a lot of stuff here, but bottom line is buy age statements if you're spending money. Never buy expensive vodka. Because it costs very little. I mean, it's like buying really expensive water. It's a fairly commoditized product. From a cost of input standpoint, brandy's on the top. Whiskey, rum. You get some really wonderful rums. So this one that I have here. This is a 1985 vintage of, and it's kind of emblematic of what we're bringing in. You can get some great old rums, but they should generally be like a pot distilled rum. Anyway, I'm just throwing a bunch of stuff out there. This is a 1946 vintage, so you can taste here in the library. We have bringing everything from like literally 1868, and you can get half-ounce pours and taste at relatively low cost. Any vintage. There are only a couple that we don't have from the past 150 years. And that's what blows me away about Armagnac. Last point on this one, on Armagnac, is all drinking is an acquired taste, right? No one took their first glass of whiskey and, we're a very, very unusual guy that took his first glass of whiskey and we're like, wow, that's great. It's always like, whoa, it's an acquired taste. We have a Pavlovian reaction because it makes us feel good. And I'm a big believer in, enjoying all the benefits of a good drink, but it's all an acquired taste. In Armagnac, you're acquiring a taste, and in the Bhakta brand, we've got the best products that didn't get sold over time. It was held by this very eccentric family. Thank God. It was a total pain in the ass to deal with from a negotiation standpoint, but from a product standpoint, this family that we bought from, they were hoarders of the best stuff. They didn't sell it. So we have the best Armagnacs. Vintage Armagnacs is the apex of the spirits world. And right now, I don't know, it'll be like, oh, I used to be able to buy that house for whatever, $500,000, and now it's $2 million. The people will look back and look at this is a time to be able to acquire, vintage products before, they become so scarce that they're basically extremely expensive. a little hemmed in with this camera.
I think another interesting thing too on the vintage point is that if you go to, you know, a good spirits merchant, a good fine wine merchant, how many Armagnacs do they have right now to begin with? How many of them are vintages? What vintages could you buy? You know, could you possibly buy a vertical decade set of, you know, of Armagnacs? And the answer is really no.
Yeah. You know, you can pick up these sets, get vertical decades, but I want you to go back and taste now. For how many of you, like if you've got a little bit of 50-year-old, now that it's been opened up for a half an hour or so, have another sip of the 50-year-old. You're going to notice that it opens up and it's less astringent. It's opened up and become a little bit mellower and sweeter. This one, for the really old stuff, you want to leave it open for a while, kind of like a wine, that it opens up and becomes much tastier.
So I saw a question pop up. When is the library open? We're open by appointment only now for private tours that we handle personally for guests. And then in the coming months, 4th of July, I believe we're going to be.
You should get them a thing. Do the dramatic reading. Go get it. Seriously, go get it. I want to get their response. We're thinking of this for the library. You get to participate. This is fun. We're coming up with this kind of quirky, we're putting it in the local newspapers. Where, you know, the people think this library is haunted. I've never come across anything. But there was a bat in here the other day, and we're coming up with these characters in the library where we're going to put ads out in the local newspapers, and he's going to give a reading of what he's coming up with. So this will be like an old-fashioned kind of Victorian print for the newspaper. And this is the story that you're going to like pick up and read. And so, you know, the idea here is to generate kind of a curious interest among the readers of people in the region of what in the hell's going on here.
I think it's like an only in Vermont kind of homespun tall tale, although
We'll see what you think.
yeah, all of it's based on a true story. So
This is you giving us a little marketing feedback while we're at it.
So we have a true volume of tremendous happenings known to have occurred within the library and cellars of Reverend T. Ruth Griswold. The Chronicles of Griswold, Find Your Spirit, which is, of course, why you come here. Published in serial by means of crank-operated press through the diligence of impartial observer Mr. Phineas Withy IV, loyal correspondent of Spirits Tycoon Mr. Raj Peter Bhakta, HOG, which stands for Headmaster of Griswold. Winged mammal torments library. Damsel bedeviled. HOG Bhakta seeks cask defenders. Warning, what follows is a graphic report of wickedness and enchantment. Please exercise caution when reading aloud in the company of children. Arriving with great swiftness and a sulfurous stench said to include secondary aromas of spice plum and cigar box, the appearance of a wicked airborne creature ground Griswold Library's operations to a halt on Tuesday. Situation remains fluid. Local spirits tycoon and present-day headmaster of Griswold, Raj Peter Bhakta, urges speedy brandy consumption, lest the aromas of his spirits collection attract once more this vengeful wraith. The madly flapping ghoul was first sighted by a watchman at 2115 as it materialized from the sky due northwest, announcing its siege with a dazzling and thoroughly tremendous display of sparks, flames, loop-de-loops, purple smoke, and frightful wails. Mr. Bhakta's surveyor has traced the imp's origination point to the confluence of the Pulteney River and Lake Champlain, a watershed known for excess supernatural activity. An investigation of the watchman's crow nest yielded only the gentleman's woolen cap and a hastily scribbled log said to have tracked the diabolical gargoyle's flight for miles before surveillance notes unraveled into a fugue of gibberish, lunacy, and increasingly illegible appeals for more mercy from Lord Christ. So generally, this is a little bit of a preview. I mean, what we're talking about here, it's hard to tell if people are, you don't know when people are tuning out with monotone.
Do you want him to stop this gibberish or continue? You can say go on or down.
All right, we're just going to keep going. Word of the impending demonic assault forced Mr. Bhakta to decamp from his supper table with snifter aloft. The HOG saw fit to scale the slated roof of a nearby domicile, where he set forth a summons from the hollow tusk he keeps looped to his trousers for all such occasions. The klaxon's truculent call alerted the Order of Griswold to impending doom inspiring its battalion of Japanese, Scottish, French, American, and Jamaican warriors of spirit to alight from their cellar barracks with great dispatch. Onlookers witnessing the clash described a pitched archery assault issued from a defensive position, man, who wrote this stuff, betwixt pyramids of brandy, whiskey, and rum casks. The trapped and bedeviled damsel was identified as Griswold's chief spirits librarian, Violet Montgomery, a toothsome hostess known to provide great comfort to guests journeying from all known continents to taste Mr. Bhakta's elixirs. Ms. Montgomery's tremulous and writhing body was delivered with alacrity down a hidden staircase and ushered into a waiting livery where the headmaster's physician administered a patented gin cure by means of pewter funnel and a gentle slap of the posterior. Ms. Montgomery remains held at Pulteney Asylum for a thorough inspection. Quote, "We stand with the survivors of the senseless fright and decry, as we long have, all forms of demonry and bedevilment," Headmaster Bhakta stated in remarks given to the local Foreign Legion, which has without hesitation enlisted in the effort to consume the tycoon's brandy collection before the ghoul is tempted to return. Quote, "While the house of Bhakta has unexpectedly found itself on war footing, we will see this skirmish through with all manner of fanfare and brimstone until the bones of the beast have been buried deep into the yawning maw of God's green earth," added the HOG. A letter requesting Governor Philip Scott declare a state of emergency was sent by means of mule-bound carrier. While the mule was believed to have perished in the mountains, its servant persisted by boot heel, only to be waylaid by highwaymen who promptly purloined the communique and made it available to a local muckraker believed to be shopping the tale to big city publishers. Initially mistaken for a griffin, an apocryphal creature cursed with the hindquarters of a lion and the beak, wings, and brandy-soaked talons of an eagle, accounts of the avian menace's genus and species were as variable as its flight path. Groundskeeper Dwight Norwood believes this daemon to be a humble fruit bat. Headmaster Bhakta, however, testifies it to be some breed of satanic chimera. We will update this space weekly as the inquest unfolds. After senselessly haranguing Ms. Montgomery, the iniquitous phantasm retreated high into the library's rafters and was last seen perched above a barrel of the tycoon's most primordial Armagnac. The cask's lid was found the following morning shattered and becrumbed with smithereens. An unknown quantity of 1888 Armagnac is reported missing. Contemptible fiends such as the one in question are known to be drawn quite involuntarily to the realm of ancient elixirs. Armagnac Brandy is considered to be of special appeal. Remaining stocks must be consumed before this repugnant creature commences its inevitable counter siege. Please help us.
So this is the kind of quirky writings that we're doing in the library, but I saw something that we're gonna, we'll bring to life the happenings here. But I saw something that was written on, like, are there any additives? Somebody asked, and Josh wrote back a couple of things. We never put any additives in anything except for in the 2707, the water is the only thing that goes in. So never sugar, never any wood flavoring, which is that bois, and never any caramel. So everything is, straight flavor from the spirit and the barrel. I have got to, I've got some guests back at home and we're flying out west early tomorrow morning. So I have got to bid you adieu. Andrew here is going to be able to take over, but if there are any other questions that I can answer that anybody has for me in particular.
What cigars do you recommend with the 2707?
What's that question?
What cigar do you recommend with the 2707?
2707, I would do a lighter cigar. So, I'm having an Ashton, and I forget what variety that I really enjoyed, but it was a light Ashton cigar that went very well with the 2707. With the 50, you can get a full-bodied, a more full-bodied cigar. And this one, I forget what I'm smoking right now, but it's going an Upman, an H. Upman. So thank you all very much for participating.
Quick question. When you say, when you use the term whiskey all the time, are you referring to single malt whiskey or the blend whiskey? What do you mean by that?
I'm speaking of all of the different, whiskey categories, but you mean in terms of production costs or?
Yes, in terms of taste and value.
Okay, so there's a lot in that question. When I'm speaking of whiskey of all different sites, so the more expensive whiskey is a single malt costs more to produce than, generally speaking, a blended whiskey. Although you can have crappy single malts and really great blended whiskeys. So by whiskey, I mean in general, whiskey is basically any distilled beer. And you can make that from a corn, that's bourbon, rye, that's like Whistle Pig. The barley is mostly Scotch, and you can have blended, which is can be what's called like a kind of a neutral grain spirit. So there's a lot of filler, and then they put in blended whiskey single malts to give it character. So there's a great deal of variety in whiskey. When I say that brandy costs about 5 times more to make, it's like it costs significantly more than that for some of the what's called like a neutral grain whiskey that is the base of a lot of the cheaper blended whiskeys. And it would be at least that to what I'm comparing it to, like a single malt. So, a Macallan or a Glenlivet or any of these guys.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
And I was just wondering, how did you decide to focus on brandy out of all the possible spirits out there?
We're doing a full portfolio of spirits, but I decided to put my name on the brandy products because I'm a believer that, brandy is the apex of spirits. Start with, the example that I gave. I've got a handful of grain, or I've got a handful and a bundle of grapes. What's more appealing, to the, let's say, naked human eye, right? The grapes. It's just a much more. It's just a better a product to start a product with, and it's more elegant, and you can get a much higher degree of quality basically from a brandy. I love whiskeys. I mean, and I love drinking whiskey. I'm a big fan of whiskey as a category. But brandy in general, especially aged brandy, well, take, for example, any one of these. So 2707 is an 18-year-old brandy. Because of market anomalies, you can buy that bottle for $80. An 18-year-old Scotch, it's tough to get a great 18-year-old Scotch for $18. For the 50-year, and you got to remember to leave this product open for a little bit because it's so old, to be able to buy something that's at least 50 years old, aged 50 years, and up to, over 150 years, they've got nothing like it in the whiskey world. I'm also a big believer in the romance of age. To me, I like the idea of being able to buy something from, 1982 and go and, Google world events and recall my own, life from these different years and imagine what was going on. You can buy a 1946 vintage, World War II had just ended, or a 1941 vintage, or, a roaring 20s vintage like 1924. That's something that you can do in Armagnac that you just can't, this doesn't exist in whiskey. So there's the level of, a romance. And then in Armagnac, it's the craft, right? I mean, you can only produce for 6 months a year. You have to, you have to go, put it into French oak, which is a very specific and expensive type of barrel. And it's done in wood-fired stills, generally on farms in the countryside. So, that if I'm going to drink something, I want to drink something that, is a true craft product, especially if I'm spending the money.
I know you have to run off, but I'm blown away with how good these are. And my experience with brandies were like E&J.
Who's speaking? Is a smart guy who's talking?
Steve.
Steve. Okay.
So I grew up with E&J, Remy, VSO versus VSOP, and which are all like shit, and I go to Wisconsin and make the brandy old fashioned, which is just an excuse to get drunk. This doesn't taste like that. It's almost like it's a different product entirely.
Yeah. So, okay, that's it. So brandy has a connotation of being cheap shit, and it's right. But like rye whiskey was like kind of like your drunk uncle's drink, 15 years ago. So, but the brandies that you're talking about, like E&J, they're technically brandies, but they're produced in a completely different way. Those would go like through highly processed in a column still, so they'd come out something like vodka. So those would be the old wines. Like if you had bad wine, you would distill the hell out of it. It still had sugar. So you could make it as a distillate. You'd use that crappier wine, dead wine, spoiled wine almost, distill it to a really high proof. So basically you're getting pure alcohol out of it. Throw that into a barrel, and then it comes out very neutral. And then you put a bunch of flavoring additives, which is why I was so adamant that we never use additives, because that's sugar, you've got caramel, you got a bunch of additives to kind of make it to the extent that it even is palatable. So this is a completely different type of, that would be like, if we're using a Scotch analogy, that would be like red label compared to blue label.
Right. But it is fascinating. It suggests to me like maybe that's why the 2707 is priced where it is, because you have to break to a higher level for people to say, no, this is different. This is on the Armagnac cognac kind of level, as opposed to, distilled alcohol that was waved over an apple kind of thing.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, on the last note, and I'm going to walk out now. The VS in terms of age, VS I think has to be aged like 3 years. VSOP, very special old pale, has to be like 6 years. XO is 10. The 2707, for example, is 18 years at its youngest. So it's a whole different level of age. I hope you all come and visit us here at the Griswold Library. Do an MIT trip. You'll have a good time. You can go back and enjoy a dormitory. Again, you can stay here overnight. Got a bunch of great stuff. I hope you enjoyed the tasting, and I leave you in the capable hands of my colleague Andrew. Thank you, Kevin, for putting this together, and Josh. And I wish you all a very pleasant evening, and I hope to meet some of you here. Oh, and Josh, you can talk about the hiring thing, because he's in charge of recruitment. So if we're hiring like all over the board, where they're busting at the seams. So he'll go over the categories. If you know some smart people, we've got a need. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raj.
Thank you. Can I ask a quick question? I put in the chat. Let's say you buy one of those 50-year-old bottles. How would you store it? Either if you want to keep it unopened, or if you open it and then you want to just keep it just so you don't drink it immediately.
Yeah, I would store it. I mean, I would certainly cellar it. I mean, for stockholder collections here, we are, building out the cellar, and those collections will be part of this cellar. I would certainly say the same thing that you would do with any fine, rare age wine or spirit. Dark place, keep it away from light, keep it at a pretty moderate cellar temperature, no spikes in and heat, light, humidity, things like that. That's really the key. But it's kind of amazing to think that these, having been to the cellar in the chateau there, where you have some of the collection goes back to 1848 in the original barrels, not at a climate control. I mean, we're kind of half underground in the shade there. And that's kind of like the ideal, but as close as we can kind of recreate that in our homes or apartments is what we would recommend.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Let's see, any other questions about product or about the Griswold experience that we're putting together here? I think one thing that Raj didn't mention is that you can come and we can taste directly out of the barrels. You see over there with the Whiskey Thief, and we can actually create bottles and create personal blends here. Say you have a wedding anniversary, you can blend, the year of your marriage and the year of both of your births. I'm personally, doing that for my own wedding with my birth year and my fiance's birth year. And then so there's kind of like a million different ways to have the tasting experience here, which you can only really do with vintage aged spirits. So it's obviously not your usual distillery tour, because we have about 100,000 books here, and we're not, we're keeping them here as part of the ambiance.
Yeah, just Manny, given that we're opening up to in-person meetings as alumni clubs and others are doing, Any plan to travel around the country with some sample taste to the regional clubs and let them know a good product made by MIT that could really make you feel good after dinner?
I think that's a great idea. I mean, we've been planning the idea of a Bhakta roadshow where we're kind of going to take the Griswold experience on the road, possibly even do pop-ups in different cities. I mean, right now we're focusing geographically on our home base in New England, so about as far south as Hudson Valley in terms of promoting this Griswold experience in New York City, and then over to Boston, and upstate New York, and then from there, I think we're going to be kind of bringing that experience nationally. Also looking at the idea of having Griswold experiences in different cities that are brick and mortar. But I think, Manny, to start with doing, an alumni network and kind of a club tour for any alumni MIT clubs that are interested is something that we'd love to talk about. And I think that Josh would probably be the guy, as an MIT guy to talk about, that with. We can plan that.
So are the Griswolds planning a trip to Wally World? Because that should be on your list.
Well, we have the wood paneled station wagon waiting outside. So I think the answer is yes.
All right. I'm in Washington, D.C., so we have a large alumni group here, 8,000 plus. And so I'd like to get in touch with somebody so we can discuss it, see the possibility. And I think there's a lot group here that would like to have the samples. And I think it would be a good event. I believe that.
Yeah, Manny, you can even send me an email. It's just andrew@bhaktaspirits.com.
Okay.
And yeah, I would love to talk about that. I think that's a great idea and something kind of, we're based on a college here, so I think that alumni networks make a lot of sense in kind of the story that we're telling.
Okay.
Hey, Andrew, I thought we would let Josh speak a little bit. He's been in the chat, but we haven't heard directly from him. So for folks who don't know him, Josh Moskowitz is an MIT alum, PhD in course 10, chemical engineering. I knew him as a grad student at MIT. We hit the Z Center quite a bit together, so bonded over some heavy weights. Mine were typically heavier than his were, but we enjoyed that. And then we got into whiskey together, and it's kind of come full circle now, coming back, and he's working at Bhakta and got us involved. So Josh, I want to give you a chance to maybe tell us.
Sure thing. I got the old the MIT Fine Spirits Showcase 2011.
Love it.
2011 Glencairn glasses here. So just briefly, I basically I was in a dual program in course 10, course 15, so that's chemical engineering and business. Graduated in 2012 and left to go into consulting for a little bit, a gaming company, doing analytics for a little bit, mostly spending my time at Boston, loved Boston. Got hired by a hedge fund down in Connecticut and spent 5 years down there in finance. So Raj hired me to kind of come back up north. I grew up in New Hampshire. I wanted to come back up north. This was an opportunity to do all of those things. So you have the strategy piece, you have general management piece, you have an analytics piece, you have a finance piece, and it's all in what is my passion, which is consumer products and retail analytics. I was never really into the global macroeconomic work down in Connecticut, but career shaping sort of experiences down there. So working with Raj has been a total adventure. As you can imagine, he's very charismatic, great storyteller, fun to be around. So we're up here now. I moved the family up to Vermont. We're in it he talked a lot about spirits tonight. Honestly, there's a whole nother story for everybody to hear, for when you come up and visit us at Griswold. But that campus, this college, is in the middle of Pulteney, Vermont. It went defunct in 2019. That town only has 3,000 people. The college had 600 students and 100 faculty and staff, and it's abandoned. So that's a crater in the middle of nowhere. At the top of Main Street, you drive down, you could see the columns of Ames Hall, and it's like, somebody had to come in and sort of turn it around. So Raj bid on this campus, and he has, a much grander plan than just building a spirits company here. This is really about Revival, he did this with Whistle Pig too. He bought a rundown farm, and yeah, he built a spirits company there, but that place, was also, it was pretty raggedy. And so with the college, like good bones there for sure, like lots of lots of work to do. We got these buildings and redo them, and the idea is in the long run to turn this into a hotel, a brewery, a roastery, a marketplace, and an educational center. His wife already started a K-6 school that's operating live on the campus. And so that business is there. Our headquarters is there. I mentioned Stage Hall in the chat. So we do have, we kept the nicest dorm that they had open so that we can have guests there. A lot of our stockholders who, again, he didn't mention much about the stockholder program, but these are folks who are buying, 2 bottles of every barrel. These guys come to pick up, these folks came to pick up their collections in Vermont, stay the weekend, have a good time with us. They stayed in Sage. And, we have campfires on campus. You have the river out back. We pulled we had a helicopter come in for them so they could do some tours of the local area. There's great hikes. It's good cross-country skiing in the winter around campus. There's just so much to do there, even without developing it much. So it's very cool. Definitely a place to if you check it out this summer, it'll be interesting and fun to see what it's all about now, and also check it out again in 5 years, 10 years, and then see how it's really transforming. We just, got the town to pass a tax stabilization ballot item for us with overwhelming favor. Like it was something where this thing needed to pass 2/3, and we got 82% of the votes. So the town's like totally behind this. And so it's just it's the beginning of a very interesting story. I mean, and so we'll see where it all goes, but this was fun. For me, I mean, that's kind of cool, and work can be fun like this. So anyway, we hope you enjoyed the event tonight. Kevin, thanks for putting this together. It was interesting for me to kind of like get back in touch with you again. I know we were in Boston together. You went to Arizona, you came back, to have something like this to kind of, get reacquainted with the community. When I'm at the hedge fund, my job is not to tell anybody about anything. Like our knowledge base is our special sauce. Like you're supposed to like not tell your friends and family what it is you do every day. Here, it's all about sharing and being with people and enjoying life together. So this is different. And it's great. So
nobody wants to hear about your hedge fund anyways. Thanks, Josh.
I'll drop a few names here quickly in the chat so that folks know who to contact for different things. We're a small team, so basically you can contact probably anybody about anything and it'll get to the right spot. But in any case, the folks you heard from tonight, you heard from Raj, you heard from Andrew, you heard from myself, Josh, Andrew and I and Raj, we'll get you in touch with the right people. But definitely we're going to be, because we're a small team now, like that's why we're focusing sort of on a more narrow geographical area. But of course, we're very early in stages right now. So as this thing starts to grow, then you can rest assured we're going to start to hit some of the other, we will expand and we will have a presence in other major hubs. And it really starts with this pilot here in Griswold. So we're trying to get this library experience right. And then that's the pattern we're going to use when we kind of expand more broadly. And but that doesn't mean we can't do a fun event, here and there. If there's critical mass, for sure, it makes sense for us to get in there and do it. So.
And I know, Josh, we're opening 2 more dorms, was it, this summer? So I think we have lodgings for 100 or 200 people. Do you know that off the top of your head?
There seems to be new facts rolling in every day. Let's say this. I mean, so Sage Hall is amongst our dorms. Sage, let me say, we're putting in a very nice hotel as soon as we can. That'll be very legitimate, high-end, good times, like very full-featured hotel. What we have today is Sage Hall, which in my view is quite nice. It's nice of a dorm as I've seen. The other dorms that Andrew's talking about, there are a number of other buildings we had to quote like winterize just because the college burns a lot of oil. Like there's a lot of spend going into buildings that really no one's using in the winter. And also like for us to monetize those, like that takes our focus off our core business and puts us more into the real estate business. So a number of those buildings, yes, they were winterized. We're gonna unwinterize at least one of them, probably more than one of them, depends on how much that costs and how many folks we need to accommodate. I would just say that for the group here, I mean, if you're looking, my first vote would be like, for you guys is to try to stay in Sage. For the, I think that the Cree and some of the other dorm rooms, I haven't myself been in them to kind of be able to give you a fair evaluation. I've walked through a couple at one point, and they look like more just like dorms. I mean, so if you're comfortable crashing in a dorm, I mean, it's a good crash pad, but Sage is done up a bit nice, pretty nicely. So, and Sage is the one where you can that's right next to Griswold. You can hit it with the tennis ball. So you roll out of bed and you're at Griswold. So, you have to. The other dorm's not too far away either, but that's on the other side of campus. Anyway, I'll drop some names here in the chat, and that's all I have for tonight. I'm gonna be back up on campus tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, and checking it out, hanging out with Raj.
So what I heard is you have a dorm and a distillery, essentially. Yeah, that's all I need. Food would be good if you have potato chips or something.
Yeah,
or pretzels.
and the cool thing with this distillery specifically, so we have our retail license to sell out of Griswold and everything. We're very close to getting the producer license for this Griswold, for the campus site. Raj bought a traditional wood burning French mobile alembic still, which just looks cool. I mean, even when it's not running, it's a very cool piece of equipment. That right now is up at his Shoreham farm. We're going to bring that down to the college in the very likely location. Andrew and I were walking in there today with a couple other folks on our team, and there's a barn right behind the library that has very high ceilings. It's a very cool venue to kind of just sit on some hay bales with throw some blankets on the hay bales and just sip spirits, hang by the still. Once we get our license, we can fire that thing up. It has to run 24 hours a day. So we have a security team that kind of rovers that kind of work the campus at night and everything. Not necessarily need someone sitting next to it, but you do need to keep the wood on the fire. So as soon as we can, we're gonna do that. I'm reaching out to local cideries and local breweries to try to get the beer inputs and the cider inputs that are going to go into this thing. And it's amazing the things you get your hands on with a small team and the stuff that we're trying to get done really quickly. But this is if you come and we got the thing burning, chuck a log on yourself and sit back and enjoy it. Yeah, it'll be fun for sure. And we'll be capturing a lot of this. I mean, as much as we can, we've been trying to, Andrew's sort of been at the helm of capturing sort of the story behind a lot of this as we kind of live and learn. And so that's part of that. I think we'll disseminate through these chronicles. I think part of it, there's a social media presence that we've been managing. And so especially as these things start to arrive, I mean, you just saw the barrels in the library. You should have seen these guys try to squeeze that stuff through the doors. Some of those barrels, the Armagnac barrels are 110 gallon barrels. And fortunately, I think it sort of made it through by less than an inch. So we were sitting there getting that stuff in, and then the foodras are coming in. So now I probably have to blow out some walls just to get that stuff into the basement. Those are huge barrels. The other thing that they didn't mention was that Raj bought these vintage cars at auction last year. So we're gonna have sort of a mini car museum as well for folks that want to come in and check that stuff out. That was also very, I mean, I certainly haven't seen cars like that. They're in very good condition.
And I think some unique tasting experiences too, like the only time in the world or in your life where you could drink, 1933 Armagnac while being driven around in the 1933 Lincoln that FDR rode to his inauguration, which Raj in a flight of fancy, bought at auction. So then, yeah, I mean, it's just all the things that are happening here, even just from a startup or business point of view, are sometimes so crazy that Josh and I are wondering, is this real? Is this actually happening? How are we doing this? So it's really cool to share that with all of you tonight, and obviously, the juice itself, as they say.
Check out Napier in Australia. They have a 1920s city, and you can do touring there. I think the city is Napier.
Napier.
Wow.
Yeah, Napier. And then there's another car museum in South Africa at a winery that's trying to think of the name, but it's got 200 cars, all drivable in South Africa. I'll find the website and send it off to Kevin.
Yeah, good. Great. No, we'll check it out.
Cool.
Andy,
All right. Well, so anyway, if I don't know, Kevin, you have any sort of final thoughts here before we wrap things up?
Yeah, no, I mean, this has been great. As I love the idea of time travel in a bottle. So, thanks so much, Josh, for connecting, MIT and the brand. And I think it'd be great to get up there and visit you guys, maybe even more than once, and see how things evolve.
That'd be great. And Kevin, thanks for having us. And I hope everybody enjoyed the tasting. And we're excited to have you come visit at some point.
Yeah, what a deal. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Kevin, thanks again as always. This was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, this was really great.
All right, everyone. Hope you all have
All right.
a good
At
weekend.
all right, Kevin. Let us know the details on that trip that you're planning. So that's perfect. So
Thanks, Steve.